Bwana Yesu asifiwe. Good evening, members. I want to take this opportunity to welcome us to our Tuesday virtual engagement. Today, Tuesday, the 7th of June, 2022. And we want to thank God for the opportunity that He has given us to continue learning and interacting in this forum. It is always an honor when we come and get to hear new things from our members. Tonight we are having one of us, Umotho Kinya Mugambi, who is going to be taking us through health and nutrition. And we will be opening this session with a word of prayer. And then after the word of prayer, we shall just invite our speaker, our facilitator tonight for the session. So allow us to pray. Everlasting Father, in the name of Jesus, we want to honor your name and thank you because you're faithful. We bless your name, God, because of granting us an opportunity to see this day. And thank you that, God, it's even coming to an end. We are grateful, Lord, for your mercies. We are grateful, Lord, for your provision. We're even thankful, Jehovah, King of glory, because of our health. And Lord, as we come to share in this engagement, we are praying that, Lord, you may be with us. Help us, Jehovah, King of glory, to learn new things and unlearn the things that we have been doing wrongly. And God, just as you have called us in your word, help us to continue edifying each other as you desire, Lord. We also want to thank you, God, because of our speaker. We want to pray for her, Lord, that you may use her according to your will. And that Jehovah, King of glory, may give us a flawless session. And once we come to the end, we shall be careful to thank you and even worship your name. We thank you and we worship you. And this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. So thank you so much once again, members. And like I mentioned, we are having Umotho, Kinya, Mbae, Mugambi. I mentioned she's one of us, nutritionist, and she'll be taking us through nutrition and health. We want to appreciate her and welcome her so that she can take us through tonight's session. So karibu sana Umotho, and may God bless you as you share with us. Karibu.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'll just share my slides and then we can quickly kickstart off the session. My name is Umotho Kinya Mbae. I'm a public health nutritionist, research officer at the Kenya Nutritionist and Dietitians Institute, and I'll be your presenter for today. So I just wanted to start off the session with that single slide. So this was me on the far left in 2020. And on the far right, this is me currently in 2022. So I just wanted, this has been a weight loss that has happened to me through diet and through living healthy. So I wanted to kickstart with that photo, even as I started off the session today. So just a little bit about me. I'm a born-again Christian and I love Jesus deeply. I'm a member of the PCA Kahawa Sukari Church and also a daughter in the PCA Kahawa Sukari Church. I serve in the brigade and the Sunday school ministry. I'm married to Cyrus Mugambi, and together we are blessed with our daughter, Joy Muthoni. So today, as I come to you to present, I am a licensed public health nutritionist. I have my bachelor's degree in nutrition and dietetics from Maseno University. And afterwards, I did my licensing for 1 year, specializing as a public health nutritionist. I currently work with the Kenya Nutritionist and Dietitians Institute as the research officer, and I have a 5 years experience in nutrition research. I'm also completing my master's in community nutrition and development, and I hold a certificate in management of diabetes and heart disease from the Wageningen University in the Netherlands. So the first question, and I remember when I saw this verse, which is a verse that really excites me. Does God want us to be healthy? 3 John verse 2. The first time I read it in King James. And I remember I was so excited about it, that beloved, I wish above all things that thou mightst prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth. And I went on further to read it in the Amplified Version. And one of the things that really stood out for me in this particular verse is one thing, that God is interested in my soul, in me being a Christian and serving him, but God also wants me to succeed in life. He wants me to prosper, and above all, God wants me to be in good health physically. I think this verse really excited me, and it's one of the verses that I have really built on, that in all the areas of my life, God wants me to succeed, to prosper, and also to be in good health, even as our soul prospers. So yes, God really wants you to be healthy, and I hope by the end of this session today, we'll all have an idea on what it means to be healthy and on how to achieve a healthy diet and to live healthy. So my presentation, I'm going to focus on an introduction to healthy eating. We're going to look at a healthy diet. Then we're going to look at healthy diets and prevention of lifestyle diseases. We're going to look at my plate, and finally nutrition at the workplace. We're going to go a little bit fast so that I hope to cover every single thing that is in my presentation today. So the introduction to healthy eating. So a quick question, what is healthy eating? When you think about healthy eating, I believe we might have different answers on what healthy eating is. But what in particular is healthy eating? We might have probably, you think about eating vegetables, eating, or maybe I could have one person probably just give me a quick answer on what you think healthy eating is. Maybe I can appoint the evangelist Harrison. Could you please tell us what healthy eating is?
Well, I've always thought that healthy eating is taking a balanced diet.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that healthy eating involves having all the meals.
Mm-hmm.
That is what we are normally used to: the morning meal, the afternoon meal, and maybe also the evening meal.
Okay, thank you so much. So when we think about healthy eating, it means that every single thing that you take that you take in and eat, that particular diet, it helps to protect you, number one, against malnutrition in all its forms. Number two, against non-communicable diseases. When we talk about malnutrition, we have malnutrition in two major ways. We have over nutrition and we have undernutrition. So when you think about overnutrition, that is being obese, that is being overweight. When we think about undernutrition, that is when we have a person who is underweight, a person who has not achieved the weight that they are supposed to have. That is the person who has not achieved the weight that they are supposed to have, or even the height that they are supposed to have. So when we talk about healthy eating, it is when a person consumes a diet that protects you against, number one, malnutrition. Number two, the diet protects you against non-communicable diseases. When you think about non-communicable diseases, we think about diabetes, we think about hypertension, and also more of the non-communicable diseases. So when does healthy eating start? One of the most interesting things is that healthy eating starts immediately a baby is born. And immediately a baby is born, healthy eating starts with breastfeeding. I am a champion for breastfeeding because I know the benefits of it, and because I've also seen it as a mom, what breastfeeding can be able to do. So one of the things that breastfeeding does is that it improves the cognitive development of the child. Not only does it improve the cognitive development of a child who has been breastfed, the risk of that child becoming overweight and obese in the future becomes lower just because the child was actually breastfed. And when we advocate for breastfeeding, we advocate the first 6 months of a child's life, the child should be breastfed. Then from 6 months to 2 years, breastfeeding should then continue, added with other foods. After 2 years, now that is at the luxury of the mom. The mom can choose to continue or not to continue. One of the other things that breastfeeding does is that it protects the mom herself from developing breast cancers, from even developing ovarian cancers, just because of the breastfeeding aspect. Breastfeeding also enhances the bond between a mom and a child. So when we talk about a healthy diet, we're talking again about a diet that is diversified, a diet that is balanced, and a diet that is healthy. Remember, I first said that a healthy diet, number one, protects you against malnutrition and also protects you against the non-communicable diseases. Now, again, we're looking at a healthy diet from the perspective where it is diversified, it is balanced, it is healthy. And we're going to see how this happens. Now, the diet for every single person varies on different things. We have the individual characteristics. We're just going to look into them. We have the cultural context. When you look among the Western community of Kenya, ugali is a loved meal. When you look at people from Central Kenya, mokimo is a loved meal. So where you come from influences every single thing that you're going to take. Locally available foods, again, Western Kenya, fish is easily available from the lake. On this other side of the country, we have njahe, which we have planted and that we grow. So, and then the dietary customs of a people. There's a way that different people have customs in the way that they eat. This should be eaten, this should not be eaten. Some of the dietary customs are very good, some of them are very unhealthy. But let us look deeper into the individual characteristics, because this involves every single person. Now, when we think about age, we think about number one, we look at it from the whole human life cycle. So when you think about age, some of the vulnerable groups, when we think about nutrition and even a healthy plate, and even as a family, when you're preparing your family meals, the vulnerable groups, number one, are children who are between 0 to 2 years of age. We consider this vulnerable because it is the period where they breastfeed first, then they start getting food. And also for children under 5 years, these ones are very vulnerable because in a way, eating patterns have not yet been established. Some of them are fussy eaters. If you're not careful, you might miss out on some critical nutrients for these particular children. They have to be supervised to make sure they have eaten. Adolescents, on the other hand, are in a period of rapid growth. They're in a period of rapid growth, and also children are also in a period of rapid growth. This period of rapid growth requires increased micronutrients, increased macronutrients, and that's why we consider them vulnerable. Pregnant and lactating mothers. Pregnant mothers are carrying another life. Lactating mothers are breastfeeding. Therefore, their needs cannot be the same as of a person who is healthy and is not pregnant and is not lactating. And then adults above 65 years of age. But more and more, we are realizing that we have a group that has been left out, 18 to 65 years of age. And these are the people who are now getting these non-communicable diseases, and that's the need to more and more focus on them when we think about healthy eating and healthy diets. Individual characteristics, again, we look at gender. When we think about gender, the carbohydrates, the proteins, and the fats, they are the same for both genders. In terms of how much you should take carbohydrates, in terms of ratios in your plate, they are the same. However, when we think about men, the composition of men means that they need the macronutrients. When I think about the macronutrients are the three major nutrients that you were taught when we were in school and growing up. The carbohydrates, when you think about a balanced diet, the carbohydrate, the protein, and the fat, men need more of that because they're generally taller, they're generally much heavier, they have greater muscle. But women need less of the macronutrients. They still need them, but they need them less of them. And then women need micronutrients. Now, the micronutrients are the small nutrients that are found in each of these foods. In the carbohydrates, there's these micronutrients. In the proteins, there's the micronutrients. In the fats, there's the micronutrients. So some of the critical micronutrients, particularly for women, is number one, calcium. Calcium, because of breastfeeding. Women breastfeed, and because of this breastfeeding, then they are at a risk of getting weakened bones and also something we call osteoporosis. Osteoporosis is when your bones, normally they have the density that a bone is supposed to have. Normally the bone loses that density and it is added onto it using calcium. If your bones cannot be added onto it, the calcium, they become weak, they become very brittle and can easily break. So calcium is very critical for women. It's one of the critical nutrients. Iron is also a very critical nutrient for women. One, women menstruate at the end of every month and they lose iron through that. You lose iron through three major ways. The first major way that you lose iron is through the menstrual periods. The second major way is if you are unwell and your body needs to use up that iron. And finally, if you've gotten a cut and you lose blood, that's how you lose iron in your body. So for women, they continuously lose iron every single month. And that means there's a need for them to have higher intake of iron. And finally, folic acid. One of the things that we realize in the African context is that when a woman gets pregnant, sometimes we have not planned for that pregnancy. And one of the most critical nutrients is folic acid. Any woman who gets pregnant gets to hospital and they are given folic acid. Now, folic acid is very critical to prevent brain and spinal cord defects in the growing baby. And this brain and the spinal cord grows within the first 3 months of a baby getting into a mother's womb. So within the first 3 months is when the brain and the spinal cord grows. Now, if a woman did not have enough folic acid and has not been supplemented immediately she gets pregnant, then there's a likelihood that a child might end up with a brain or a spinal cord defect. Now, sometimes at this particular period, the woman realizes that she cannot even, during the first 3 months is when also women have this morning sickness. So you realize if she did not have enough maternal stores for folic acid, sometimes even the supplementation that we do when we realize the woman is pregnant may not be enough. That is why gender is different. Finally, physical activity, when we think about the individual characteristics, unhealthy diets and lack of physical activity are leading global risks to health. Physical activity is one of the things that keeps your body moving and keeps your body very active and helps you reduce so many diseases, as we're going to look into it as we go much deeper into this lesson for today. So some of the physical activity that we have sedentary or light, active or moderately active. Then we have vigorously active. I have put a small score there that is written 3.0 MET. What MET means is the metabolic equivalent. One metabolic equivalent is the energy you use that when you are simply resting and you're not doing any single thing. So when I say 3 metabolic equivalents or 3 to 6 metabolic equivalent is the same energy that you will use when you're resting. When you're walking briskly, you use 3 times the energy that you would have used when you're resting. As nutritionists, as people in health, we advise that every single day, or at least in a week, you get in 150 minutes as a whole. That means at least 30 minutes every single day, or at least 30 minutes for 5 days in a week. You must do some active or moderate activity. That means you walk briskly, you can do house chores, you can also skip a rope. These are very, very critical for your health. Finally, lifestyle. As an individual, your lifestyle is your interest, your opinion, your behaviors, your orientations. This really influences your health, because what you believe in, if you believe that meat is not good, then you're not going to take meat. We have some people who say that I'm not going to take meat. If you believe that meat is not good, you're not going to take it. If you believe that liver is for children, then liver will be given to children. We have some of the behaviors that individuals and people have. It is really per person, and this really influences your nutrition status finally in the long run. Now, as a small scale and as the quick way that we check for your nutrition status, what you can also do as an individual is step on a weighing scale and measure something we call your BMI. Now, your BMI is how much weight can your spinal cord support. That means somebody who is taller is supposed to have more weight as compared to somebody who is much shorter. So how much weight can your spinal cord support? And depending on the value that we get, then we can able to rate you as underweight, normal weight, overweight, obesity, or depending on what we get. So BMI, a quick example of how we calculate BMI is simply your kilograms, then we divide it by your height squared. So this quick example that I have here is an adult who weighs 70 kgs with a height of 1.7 meters will have a BMI of 22.9. What I have done is simply 70 divided by 1.75 times 1.75. This is something that you can do much later, and you can use it against the BMI to check where you stand. Now, I quickly want to go and build up on the key food groups when we talk about health. What are we talking about? When you talk about a healthy diet, I want to build a foundation first on what a healthy diet is. Then I'm going to build up further on that foundation that I'm going to prepare for you, so that you can now fully understand how healthy diets can prevent us against non-communicable diseases and malnutrition. Remember when I started, I said that a healthy diet protects you against malnutrition, protects you against non-communicable diseases. So I'll start in with the foundation on what a healthy diet is. Then we're going to see how now the healthy diet can prevent you from getting these diseases. So we have key food groups that we talk about as nutritionists, key food groups that we would like mothers, that we would like the person who prepares food to understand. We would like fathers to understand so that they can be able to support the women in buying this food in their households. So we have key food groups, and these are the food groups. The first one, I'll just go right into them. So the first one is starchy foods. Now, starchy foods, we are saying, number one, they're a source of carbohydrates. They include whole grains, they include cereals, roots, tubers, and plantains. Now, when these starchy foods are broken down, they provide, number one, the body with the energy it needs, the body you need to do your daily activities. Number two, they provide the body with fiber, which is important for digestive health, and a range of vitamins and minerals. We're going to look into this much, much deeper. Finally, they provide some minerals and some essential vitamins. We encourage that whole grains and cereals are not processed and they are minimally processed. They contain more nutrients and fiber. In grains, the germ, what is inside, like if you take maize, that inside little yellow thing is the richest in micronutrients. And the whole grains provide energy to the body over a longer period of time. We're going to see how whole grains do this. So these are the example of starchy foods. Starchy foods are divided into two major groups. We have the cereals and the products. Then we have the white roots, tubers, and plantains. When you think about cereals and products, we have the I've said they give us carbohydrates, which is starch. Then there is fiber, a little bit of protein, a little bit of fat. Same to the white roots, the tubers, and the plantains. The food examples, I believe you can see them. When you talk about cereals and products, it is maize, rice, sorghum, millet, wheat, oats, pearl millet, ugali, porridge, chapati, mandazi. Remember here in cereals and products, I have not mentioned beans. Please note that. Okay, we move deeper into fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables are like the powerhouse of vitamins, minerals, and fiber. Remember I told you they are macronutrients. So the starchy foods fall in the macronutrients. Fruits and vegetables form part of the micronutrients. So the little nutrients and the vitamins, the minerals that your body needs to fight off diseases, to keep the body healthy, this is where they're found. Where you find the iron, the calcium, the fruits, the vegetables, they form part of that, and also other food sources. So fruits and vegetables, they are divided into different areas. We have vitamin A rich vegetables. Any vegetable, if you'd like to, any vegetable that has vitamin A is yellowish in color. So carrots, pumpkins, butternuts, orange fresh sweet potatoes, and those are the nutrients that they give. Then we have the dark green leafy vegetables. This includes the spinach, the terere, the pumpkin leaves. We have other vegetables, which includes onions, cauliflower, cabbages, celery. We have the vitamin A rich fruits, which are the dark orange fruits, the mango, the pawpaws. Then we have other fruits, the guava, the avocado, the pineapples, the green plums, and the grapes. Then we have the legumes, the pulses, the nuts, and seeds. This is a very critical food group. Remember, the first group I've said it's the starchy foods. The second group is the vegetables and the fruits. Then we have the legumes, we have the pulses, we have the nuts and seeds. Now, legumes are plants with seed pods that have two halves. So your beans, your peas, your lentils fall in this group now. So this group is a rich source of protein. It also provides some carbohydrates. It also has soluble fiber, which is really important. And we're going to look at dietary fiber and the importance that it has in our bodies. And then some of them also contain some iron. The nuts are dry single-seeded fruits, the njugu karanga, the cashew nuts, the the macadamia, and they're very energy dense and very, very healthy because of their oil content that is in them. So the legumes and pulses, these are some of the examples: the nuts, the pigeon peas, the soya beans. Then we have the nuts and seeds, including pumpkin seeds, amaranth, sunflower, simsim, macadamia, cashew nuts, which are a powerhouse of good health. Then we look at the meat, the fish, and the animal protein products. So we have looked at the plant protein. Now we are looking at the animal protein. So animal protein, they supply all the essential amino acids in the correct quantities. Amino acids are the building blocks for hormones in your body, the building blocks for so many activities inside your body. And what we are saying is that edible insects also provide an affordable and an alternative source of animal protein. So if you are able to take edible insects, now we are having crickets being made into different sources of food, then feel free and enjoy that if that is something that you can easily take. Please note that also the raw fish, the poultry, the meat and eggs can be infected with diseases which end up causing sicknesses, and therefore the handling and preparation of these foods should be top notch. So we have the organ meat, which involves the liver, the kidney, the heart, other organ meats, and you can see the nutrients that they contribute. Actually, one of the best sources of iron that I have mentioned is very critical for women is the liver, the kidney, and the other organ meats, because particularly the liver, because that is where all the blood passes through and all the blood is stored through. Then we have the flesh meats, which is goat meat, game meat, pork, beef, mutton. We have eggs, and also eggs are a source of vitamin A as well from the egg yolks. Then we have fish and seafoods. Then we have milk and milk products. This involves the fresh milk, the fermented milk, and the yogurt. They're the most important in this particular food group. We are saying because milk and milk products are the main sources of calcium. Remember, I mentioned earlier on that women need calcium in their bodies. They also supply protein, riboflavin, vitamin B12, and potassium. Now, some dairy products such as ice cream and milk-based frozen desserts, I've not put them in this group because they're very high in saturated fat and very low in the essential nutrients that a particular person needs. The milk and milk products are here: the calcium, the protein, the fat, milk from goats, cows, sheep. These are some of the food examples. Now we go to the fats and oils. Fats and oils are a very, very critical food group. And as we go on to the next session to build up on these food groups, you're going to see just how important it is. But fats and oils, they give the body the energy and also help it to absorb other nutrients. Remember, I mentioned the vegetables and the fruits that are yellow in color. Any vegetable and fruit that is like the carrots, when you're preparing carrots, if they're in the stew, you immediately get the vitamin A. If you're just preparing carrots as a salad, probably you're making the salad that you usually make, that is what is it called? A salad that has pineapples and probably has carrots in them. You need to add just a little bit of oil, like a spoonful of olive oil, into the whole salad and just mix it up. If not, most of the time they also serve it next to other foods that have oil in them, so that for vitamin A to be absorbed, particularly from the plant sources, there needs to be the presence of just a little bit of oil. So oil is very critical in your body. This oil is also very essential in carrying out very many processes in your body. It is also essential in layering different organs in your body. But if you consume it in excess, then you end up having damage. What we are saying is that these foods, the fats and the oils, they include the tea, the coffee creamer, the mandazi that you take in, the biscuits, the potato chips, but you're going to look at it and see what is the healthy oil and what is the bad oil. So the oils and fats, we have saturated fat, then we have the unsaturated fats. And these are the food examples that we usually have. Then we have sugars and sweets. Now, sugars and sweets, this includes the refined sugar, the jam, the sweets, the preserved fruits that have been added sugar in them, and we do not advocate for them at all, but it is something that people take, and therefore I mention it as one of the food groups that we talk about. Then finally, we have condiments, we have spices, we have beverages, Now, condiments and spices, they're not really a food group, but it is something that we use on a day-to-day basis. These are the roicos that we use. So spices are from plant products. This includes from the leaves, the flowers, and the seeds. They include pepper, cinnamon, nutmeg, fennel, cloves, thyme, and we really encourage, particularly if you can get your spices whole and fresh and not what has been mixed up for you or grinded for you, then they are really good in spicing up your food so that you can reduce the amount of salt that you take in. Then we have condiments. These are spices or sauces or preparations. These include mayonnaise, your tomato sauce, your barbecue sauce, and your soy sauce. Then beverages, we look at tea, coffee, and alcohol. So I have discussed quite a number of food groups. Remember when I started, I mentioned what a healthy diet is. I also mentioned that it is diversified, it is balanced. So the diversification, the balance that I was talking about, here it is. Number one, variety. Out of the food groups that I have mentioned, you should take at least, even for children, 4 to 5 food groups a day. And foods within food groups varied day to day according to what is in season. What do I mean by this? When you take in rice today, tomorrow you take in ugali. When you take in rice and beans today, tomorrow you can have ugali and meat within the food groups. And remember, I'm saying 4 to 5 food groups within a day. That means when I think about the 4 to 5 food groups, I'm thinking about there's a vegetable there and a fruit, that is one food group. There's an animal protein, that is one food group. There is legumes, the pulses, the nuts, that's another food group. We have the milk and milk products, that is another food group. So within a day, you should have at least 4 to 5 food groups, and you keep on changing. Why do we advocate that you keep on changing these food groups? Because ugali is going to contain, or maize is going to contain riboflavin. Rice, on the other hand, is going to contain niacin, the little micronutrients. If you do not vary them, there's a likelihood you're going to end up deficient in one of the micronutrients. There's another likelihood, particularly now with the rise of aflatoxins. If you particularly just take one food group, and that one food group has particular toxins, then you're going to have toxins accumulate in your body. So variety as you take in your foods. Adequacy. Meals should be enough to meet the nutritional requirements per person. Remember, I discussed age. For a small child, the amount of food they take is different from an adolescent. So adequacy, balanced, enough but not too much type of each food. Then we have the kilocalories and the energy control. Meals should not include too much or too little energy. But for children who consume small amounts of food at a time, as a parent, you're supposed to make that food in a way that whatever meal that this baby takes is rich and healthy enough to push this child further for a longer period of time. So nutrient density, when we think about nutrient density, we are thinking about taking in a food that has more nutrients. So you take in one food that has more nutrients as compared to taking a food that does not have, taking in a food that has more nutrients as compared to taking a food that has more calories. Here I mentioned kilocalories. Kilocalories is the energy that is in a food. When we talk about nutrient density, is the amount of nutrients that are in different foods. As I was mentioning the different foods, I'll just go back a little bit. You can be able to see that some foods are like here, some of the foods, like the nutrients, when you look at vitamin A rich vegetables, vitamin A, fiber, vitamin C, potassium. When you look at cereals and products, carbohydrates, fiber, protein, fat. So what do I mean when I talk about, let me just go back. When I talk about nutrient density and kilocalorie control, it means you need the carbohydrates, but you do not need too much of it. What you need a lot of it is the vegetables and the fruits. Why? Because they have more nutrients in them as compared to the energy. You don't need all this energy. And excess energy intake is what leads to more challenges, particularly in terms of obesity. But we look at it, moderation. Some foods have few or no nutrients, foods like soda, and therefore should be consumed in moderation. Then safety in how we prepare our foods and how we store it. You might have a very healthy meal, but how you prepare it, how you store it, ends up exposing this food to germs. So you take it and you end up having a running stomach, and that food has not helped you. And then the foods should be minimally processed. That means whole grains. So now let me build up on what I have taught. I have taught on the 7 food groups, 7 key food groups, with, let me say, like almost 6 key food groups and then 3 extra ones. And I simply want to build up on what I have taught. How can these foods that we have learned now prevent us from getting diseases? Number 1, dietary fats and health. I would really like for us to look at this, because now this is, now how do we eat? Number 1, for dietary fats, we have 3 kinds of fats. This is the fat that is in your plate. The fat in your plate, we have number 1, saturated fatty acids. We call them SAFA. And for this study, I'll be writing them as SAFA for this presentation. We have monounsaturated fatty acids. We call them MUFA. The SAFA is usually solid at room temperature. So your butter, your Blue Band, your Kimbo is SAFA. Monounsaturated fatty acids is called MUFA. It is liquid, but sometimes it can get cloudy. It includes olive oil, avocado, nuts, and plant food. And sometimes some meats have a little bit of monounsaturated fatty acids. Then we have polyunsaturated fatty acids. They are very fluid in nature and very, very healthy. It includes the omega-6 and the linoleic acids. Now, I want us to look at this very critically. Remember, I said that fat is really healthy in your body. Your body needs fat within it to do very many functions, including absorbing nutrients like vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K. It needs fat for your body to absorb these vitamins. Number 2, fats also are needed in many organs of your body for the organs to function, and also for hormones to be released in your body. You need a little bit amount of fat, but you do not need too much of it. Now, fat, we have said on the plate, that's why I'm saying dietary fat is in 3 forms: saturated fatty acids, monounsaturated, and the polyunsaturated. The polyunsaturated, we have the omega-3 fatty acids. Some of them are in flax seeds and the linseed oil, and others come from fish. This is on the plate. Now, when these 3 go inside your body and are taken within your body, they come out in 2 different major ways. So they come out in 1, low density lipoprotein, and the second one is high density lipoprotein. I really want us to understand this particular aspect because we're going to be discussing it throughout the whole presentation. So when I think about low density lipoprotein, you have taken in a meal, and this meal has gone into your body. Once it goes into your body, on the plate, this is what we refer to as fat: saturated fatty acids, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated. Within your body, then fat, or in another word, cholesterol, is in 2 major ways. The first one is low density lipoprotein. The second one is high density lipoprotein. The low density lipoprotein, in the simplest ways of term, I want you to think of it as the way you think about uji. Or do you know how thick uji is? Or the oil that a car that has already used oil, that black oil that comes out from the car. Now, these are your veins, and low density lipoproteins are passing through it. So low density lipoproteins are, as fat moves within your body, it moves in protein covered molecules that are called lipoproteins. But the low density lipoproteins are very heavy, and they take fat from your liver to the rest of the body. And because they're very heavy, I hope you can all see me, as they travel through your veins, they end up leaving deposits. They leave deposits. They leave deposits within your veins. This is what we call the low density lipoprotein. Now, when these low density lipoproteins are very high in your body, they can lead you to getting atherosclerosis, heart attack, and even a stroke. What do I mean by atherosclerosis? I'm telling you, low density lipoprotein is fat that is very heavy. As it travels through your veins, it ends up leaving deposits and deposits and deposits. So you can imagine your vein is like a pipe of water, and this pipe of water has been carrying this low density lipoprotein for a long time, and it accumulates and accumulates. It goes, and at one point of the walls of your arteries and your veins, the body gets this message that there is something that has accumulated on the wall and we do not understand what it is. The same way when you get a wound, after a while a scar forms. So your body sends in white blood cells to fight and try and take off this fat. The white blood cells are not really able to fight it off. After that, the body says, okay, now deposit calcium there. Calcium is deposited there, and it becomes really hard. So atherosclerosis means that there is a buildup of plaque within your arteries and within your veins. Now, this buildup of plaque makes your veins become very narrow. And if your veins become very narrow, what happens is that blood is trying to pass through the veins and blood is not able to pass through. So atherosclerosis is now that narrowing of the veins, the buildup of the plaque, and then the hardening of the veins because of the calcium that was deposited. So what now, this low density lipoprotein, one of the things that is going to lead to is that you're going to end up with the veins are narrowed. So as blood tries to pass through, what actually happens is that your blood pressure builds. Think about, again, water passing through a pipe, and unafinya the pipe and it's really small. The water comes out at a very high pressure. When you open up the pipe and the water comes out high, the water comes out at a high pressure. So when you have atherosclerosis, then you're going to end up having high blood pressure as well. As your heart also struggles to pump through this small vein, high blood pressure as well happens. If this plaque breaks off and gets into the veins, that's how you end up with clots in your blood system. If it happens within the brain and a blood vessel ends up busting, that's how you end up with a stroke. So we have said those are low density lipoprotein, which is bad fat. But your body also has something that we call good fat. Now, good fat or protective fat is like the garbage truck of the bloodstream. What happens? This high density lipoprotein, just in the simplest term, is now oil, or it moves at a very high speed through your veins. And what happens is that it goes and collects all those low density lipoproteins and takes them away from your veins and goes and deposits them in the liver for destruction. So again, I'll go back to this slide. When you take in saturated fatty acids, what ends up in your body is the low density lipoprotein. But when you take in this good fat, the monounsaturated fatty acids, and particularly the polyunsaturated fatty acids, what happens in your body is that you end up with this good fat. And this good fat or protective fat is really good in your body. When you exercise, and that is why I was telling you physical activity is really good. When you exercise and you're running, your body triggers the release of this high density lipoprotein. So it triggers the destruction of the low density lipoproteins. When you go to hospital and we tell you have high cholesterol, it's because you have high low density lipoprotein and very low amounts of high density. So this is the good fat that is needed. This good fat, I'll just go back again, comes from the polyunsaturated fatty acids, or the PUFA, and the monounsaturated. So at all costs, we avoid the saturated fatty acids. We are going to look at fat again as we end the presentation. Proteins. So proteins, again, I mentioned that we have both animal protein, we also have the plant protein, and I've showed you the different food groups in them. Now, protein is very, very critical in the maintenance of our bones, our muscle, and skin. If somebody comes to hospital to see us as a nutritionist and they have been severely burnt, one of the first things we do is put them on a high protein diet so that their body can quickly repair itself. The amino acids in your body, what tells your body when you're burnt and you quickly take your hand away, that communication comes from the presence of proteins, and these proteins is what builds up the amino acids. Now, animals generally have a better quality of proteins as compared to plant proteins. But despite them having the better kind of protein, what do we advise and what do we advocate for as the nutritionists? Number one, on a weekly basis, animal protein should be 40% and plant protein should be 60%. That means when you think about your intake of animal protein versus plant protein, animal protein should be 40% and plant protein should be 60%. We're going to see why. Now, plant proteins take them a minimum of 4 times in a week. Remember the plant proteins I talked about, the njugu karanga, the nuts, the seeds, then the beans, the njahe, the beans, the njahe, the ndengu, the kamande. So plant proteins a minimum 4 times a week. Animal proteins a minimum 2 times a week. So plant proteins, we take them more as compared to animal proteins. For animal proteins, do not eat more than 500 grams of meat per week. This is red meat, inclusive of offals. Remember what I have told you, that animal protein has a better quality of protein. You need it in your body, you do not need it in high levels. Just a little bit of meat has already met the requirements for you in your body. You do not need a high amount of it. You just need a little bit of it. Number 2, red meat and processed meat increase the risk of cardiometabolic diseases because, number 1, I've told you about saturated fat. They are high in saturated fat. When animal meat fat it solidifies at room temperature, that means it's high in saturated fat. Number 2, it has this component that is called L-catenin, which promotes atherosclerosis. I've taught you about atherosclerosis, which is the hardening of your arterial walls and your veins as well. Eggs is an high quality protein, and up to 1 egg is allowed. We are going to look at the egg towards the end, kabisa, as we are going to look at that part, because I know very many questions will arise from there. So we are going to look at the egg and why even up to 1 egg is okay. So fish is a very good alternative to meat. If you can take in fish, fish is the best, particularly oily fish, which is rich in the omega-3 fatty acids. Remember, I've told you about the omega-3 fatty acids, which are part of the PUFA, or the polyunsaturated fatty acids. It is very healthy. It helps reduce depression. It has been shown to reduce depression. It helps produce, it switches off the inflammation in your body. Again, let me tell you about how inflammation occurs. You see, as fat accumulates along the walls of your arteries, the body sends communication there that it is like a wound. It is not natural for your body. The same way when you fall down and you get a wound and you even feel a lot of heat where that wound is the same thing that is now happening internally. You have become, you're overweight, probably you're obese. There's a lot of, or maybe you're not even obese, you're not overweight, but the cholesterol levels are high in your body. That means the LDL, the bad lipoprotein. And what it means is that within your body, it's like you're swollen everywhere, but you can't see the swelling. It is inside your body. So fish has these omega-3 fatty acids that switch off this inflammation. But also how we prepare the fish. If we deep fry the fish, we'll still have the omega-3, but because we have deep fried that fish, we change the composition of the fish. So the best way to prepare fish is to stew it, or to bake it, or to steam it. Once in a while, it's okay to deep fry it. But if you take it frequently, then stew it, steam it, bake it in the oven. Again, it can decrease the risk of a heart attack, stroke, and prevent cardiac arrhythmias because the omega-3 release the HDL, the good fat in your body. Again, the bad fat, what it does, it goes and accumulates along your major organs. Normally, the heart has a layer of fat, but when you have the LDL, it accumulates around the heart, and that fat becomes so much because most times it accumulates around your abdomen. Your abdomen carries some of the major organs in your body, your kidneys, your pancreas, and you end up with the diseases because of this amount of fat that has accumulated in your body, the LDL, the bad fat. Now, carbohydrates. I also want us to look into this really deeply. So we have looked at dietary fat, we have looked at the proteins. Now let us look into the carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are divided into 2. Remember when I mentioned about starchy foods, I said starchy foods. Then I also talked about plant proteins. Plant proteins have a little bit of carbohydrates in them. The starchy foods, the maize, the cereals, they also have, those ones are high levels of carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are divided into two major groups. One, we have the sugars. Then number 2, we have the polysaccharides. Let me get into them. So the sugars, they are easily digested. They are rapidly absorbed causing a rapid glucose peak in the blood, followed by an insulin response, immediate source of energy. When I think about these sugars, this is your refined carbohydrates. The ugali, where everything has been taken out, the fiber has been taken out. It is just the ugali itself, like that, the white bread, soda. So what happens is that immediately you take in, say, a slice of white bread, it gets into your body, it is quickly digested because it's a very simple carbohydrate. It's quickly digested. Then it is absorbed in your body. When any carbohydrate gets into your body, what happens is that it is broken down into sugar. So once it's broken down into sugar, your body senses, oh, sugar has come into the body. And because sugar has come into the body, the pancreas is told, please release some insulin. Insulin is released. This excess sugar is taken and is stored as fat in your body. Is taken and stored as fat in your body. So carbohydrates can also make you have the bad fat, the LDL. The first source of the LDL is the saturated fat. The second source is the carbohydrates. When you take them in excess, you need them for your body, but when you take them in excess, and particularly when you take the refined carbohydrates, when you take in a soda, that is just quickly transferred into fat within your body. So what should we take? Polysaccharides. Now, these are multiple sugar units. In another word, complex carbohydrates. I call them the golden food, personally for me as a nutritionist. Why? They take a long time to digest and are present in large amount in staple foods like potatoes, rice, wheat, pasta. Again, the rice, the wheat, the pasta, the ugali. But what is the difference? The first one is starches. Starches take a long time to digest, but still raise the blood sugar. But finally, this is where I wanted to get to, the indigestible carbohydrate or dietary fiber. When you take in your foods as whole wheat, when you take it as whole, not whole wheat, as whole foods, when you take in your beans, when you take in your njahe, they are really a very healthy source of carbohydrate. Why? Because this carbohydrate, it is not like taking white bread where you take in the bread and the sugar is just released into the body. These carbohydrates are, you can think about maybe kamba that have tied up these carbohydrates. It is tied up in this fiber. That means it is not easily accessible. That means your body takes a very long time to digest it. So if you take brown chapati, or if you take white chapati, difference. If you take white chapati, immediately gets into your body quickly, it is quickly broken down and becomes sugar, and the pancreas is told, take this sugar, convert it into fat. But when you take in a brown chapati, before it is broken down, it takes a long time. That's what you will hear people say that when I take ugali ya kienyeji, nasikia nimeshiba sana. It is true, wanashiba sana. And it's the same quantity that you would have taken in white, because the glucose does not peak immediately. It takes time for that food to pass through your bowel and come out. So you feel fuller for longer. You will take a small piece of food, but stay with it for a longer period in your body. And the first thing is that most of it is not even in the sugars form. It's dietary fiber, which is going to be excreted out. Let's just look at dietary fiber, which I call dietary fiber is what protects you against disease. Remember, we said a healthy diet protects you. So dietary fiber is what protects you against disease. So dietary fiber is a type of carbohydrate that the body cannot digest, and it is not usually broken down into sugar molecules. Thus, it helps to regulate body sugars and keeps hunger in check. That means you're not frequently hungry. If you take white bread, by tea time you want some biscuits. By lunchtime you probably want some chips. You are continuously hungry. But the day you take brown chapati or you take your njahe, you feel fuller. That means you do not quickly run again to eat food. So number one, we have soluble fiber. Now soluble fiber dissolves in water, and it helps to lower glucose level and also blood cholesterol levels. The food sources are oatmeal, chia seeds, nuts, beans, lentils, apples, and blueberries. Insoluble fiber helps food move through your digestive system, promoting regularity and preventing constipation. The food sources are whole wheat products, quinoa, brown rice, legumes, leafy green vegetables. Let's look at it a bit deeper. So children and adults need at least 25 to 35 grams of fiber per day for good health. A high intake is associated with a lowered risk of, I have told you fiber reduces diabetes. What happens? The soluble fiber, it attracts water in your stomach and it forms a gel. This slows down digestion. After it has been slowed down, it means you've taken in the food, but the blood sugar does not peak immediately. That means the blood sugar will peak really slowly, and this helps prevent the formation of type 2 diabetes. Because diabetes happens when you take in food, quickly broken down into sugar. You take in food, it's quickly broken down into sugar. At some point, your pancreas gets tired. The same way you can wear a cap and you feel the cap around your head. But after a while of wearing the cap, unasikia, you don't even remember it. When you keep on taking food and sugars keep on going high, your pancreas gets tired. It no longer has the energy to produce insulin to store that sugar that you have taken. But when you take in soluble fiber, it means the blood sugar does not just go immediately high. It takes time before it goes in. Number 2, blood cholesterol levels. Now, we have said we have 2 types of cholesterol, the good fat and the bad fat. This helps to reduce the bad fat. What happens is that cholesterol is usually used to make bile acids. Bile is what, when you take in fat of any kind, bile is usually released and then it breaks down that fat so that it can get into your body. Now, what fiber does, it goes and binds to the bile acids. After the bile acids are through with the digestion part, in the small, they are usually in the intestines, they are reabsorbed back into the body. But when you've taken in a food that is full of fiber, the fiber, like, they act like a sponge. They just take in all these bile acids and they excrete them. So once they have been excreted, your liver will need to pull the cholesterol from the blood to make new bile acids. And in the process of this, your body then, the blood cholesterol levels reduce. Constipation. If you're constipated, fiber again helps to reduce the constipation. This happens in 2 major ways. The soluble fiber can create a gel, and this gel helps to soften your stool and to bulk your stool, and you're able to go to the washroom. Now, insoluble fibers, on the other hand, just in a very little way, they mildly irritate your intestinal lining. And when they do this, you end up getting water and mucus that helps to encourage the movement of stools, and you get softer and easier to pass stools. And then finally, these dietary fibers also help to reduce breast cancer and help to reduce the menstrual pain. Again, just like the bile acids, the breast cancer, ovarian cancer, and also the menstrual pain is usually as a result of very high levels of estrogen in your blood. So what happens? Estrogen in your body. Estrogen is a hormone that is necessary. For women, even for men, we have estrogen that is necessary. But when estrogen is in excess, that is what causes one of the reasons that causes the breast cancers and leads to a lot of menstrual pain. And this is something that personally I will say that I know, and I know it works. What happens is this: estrogen is, number 1, found in animal products. So animal products, milk, meat, meat and milk, they usually have estrogens. So when you take them in, it's like adding estrogen to your body. You still need the meat, but that's why we're saying not so much of it. Now, what happens is that estrogen is pulled from the bloodstream by the liver, and it is sent also into the intestinal tract. And there the fiber soaks it up and disposes it off. When you have little estrogen, it means your menstrual cramps will not be as painful. Because what estrogen does is that it is what is responsible for the uterine wall and lining it up. So you will notice on the months that you have taken a lot of meat, and no exercise at all, what happens is that the endometrial wall is lined up really heavy, and the breaking down of that wall causes a lot of pain to your body. But when that endometrial wall is not lined up as heavy, it means the pain that you get at the end of the month is much, much less. So dietary fibers again reduce breast cancer, they reduce the menstrual pain. So dietary fibers also help to reduce the coronary heart diseases. Remember, I've told you it reduces the cholesterol level. It also helps reduce the colorectal cancer because food does not stay in your gut, it is quickly excreted. It helps to reduce the stroke. Remember, I've told you about the LDL fat, and if the LDL fat is pulled away from your body and disposed away, as when bile acids are disposed away and more the cholesterol is pulled from your body, then you end up healthy. And also reduces chronic kidney disease. Now, these risk reductions will amount to 10% for every 10 grams higher intake of fiber each day. Foods that contain fiber are often rich also in heart-healthy minerals such as potassium, magnesium, vitamin C, and beta-carotenes. So foods that contain fibers, maybe you might want to look at them one more time. Here they are. So you can just look at them again. We have said soluble fiber, oatmeal, chia seeds, nuts, beans, lentils, apples, blueberries. Insoluble fiber, whole wheat products, brown rice, legumes, leafy greens, fruits with edible skins like pears and apples. Fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables, remember when I talked about nutrient density? So fruits and vegetables, the recommended intake is 400 grams per day. And this has been shown to lower blood pressure. Actually, when you talk about fruits and vegetables, you talk about 5 servings in a day. We are going to look at it on how to practically ensure your diet is healthy, but 5 servings per day. 5 servings, what does it mean? At breakfast, you have a fruit and a vegetable as you take your food. At lunch, you have a fruit and a vegetable. Finally, at supper, you have a fruit and a vegetable. 1 serving is the small cup that we use to take tea, or that cup that is usually read written CK or the CK. That is the average size of a cup. So 1 serving is that cup. That means 5 servings is that 5 servings of fruits, 5 servings of vegetables, you're going to meet these 400 grams. Fruits usually contain more calories and more sugars than vegetables, even when you taste them, but it is okay because they are really, really healthy. They are nutrient dense. The peeling of fruits before consumption lowers its nutritional value. Again, wisdom is profitable. I did not say you take watermelons with a rind, but fruits like apples, wash them well, please take them in. Now, look at fruits and cardiometabolic disease. Fruits protect against coronary heart disease. Now, the risk of coronary heart disease is 10% lower in people who just take in 2 to 3 pieces of fruits per day. Tumesema recommended intake is 400 grams, but if you just take in 2 to 3 pieces, your possibility of developing coronary heart disease is 10% lower. For stroke, every 2 extra pieces of fruit that you take above the recommended intake lowers your risk of getting a stroke by 20 to 30%. Citrus fruits like oranges can protect you against stroke. Eating 2 to 3 fruits per day lowers the risk of you getting type 2 diabetes. And these fruits will do this because, well, they're high in sugars, they're also high in dietary fiber. And remember what I've told you about fiber and the good benefits that fiber is full of. Vegetables, increasing the amount of vegetables by 200 grams per day lowers the risk of both coronary heart disease and stroke. So basically, your plate should be fruits and vegetables, a little bit of carbohydrates, a little bit of plant proteins, but you're going to look at how your plate should look like. Then the green leafy vegetables, they reduce the risk of you getting a stroke and also lower the risk of you getting type 2 diabetes. Cruciferous vegetables, these include your cabbages, reduce the risk of type 2 diabetes by 10 to 15%. So you can see all types of fruits and vegetables are healthy. The green leafy vegetables are healthy. The cabbages as well, the cauliflower is also healthy. So we will not say one food is superior to another food. As a nutritionist, if you ask me which food is superior, I will say foods that are rich in dietary fibers, because that is what truly protects you against diseases. And I just thought of sharing this. as a fun fact, one of the healthiest vegetables is the beetroot. And very many other vegetables are also healthy. So what I've explained here is that beetroot is rich in something we call nitrate. And the body converts this nitrate into nitrate 2 and then into nitrate oxide. Now, nitrate oxide dilates and relaxes the arteries. Remember what I've taught you about your veins in your body. When your veins are relaxed, what happens is that blood flows through them without pumping at a very high pressure. But if your veins are very tightly tensed up together, they become really small. And as blood tries to pump through, it is really hard for blood to pass through. So one of the vegetables that really has a beneficial effect on blood pressure is taking 1 glass of beetroot juice per day. Also, the green leafy vegetables have the same effect. They release the nitric oxide, and this nitric oxide makes your blood vessels to relax. And as they relax, blood can pass through smoothly. And as blood passes through smoothly, what happens is that the blood pressure reduces. Again, now I go back to the dietary fat because I have taught all these things and I just want us to go back to the dietary fat. Now, what I taught you is that replacing saturated fat with polyunsaturated fat reduces your risk of getting cardiovascular disease by up to 30%. That means instead of cooking with kimbo and you cooked with olive oil, it means by 30% you will reduce your risk of getting a cardiovascular heart disease. So the best is cook with olive oil. Do not cook with do not cook with kimbo. Number 2, instead of taking kimbo, you decided to prepare your meal to probably boil some foods and also add them up with maybe njugu karanga and serve njugu karanga as part of that meal. What happens is that the njugu karanga has the good fat as well. And then these puffer aspects, comes from the nuts and the seeds and also from the fish, the fatty fish. So the fatty fish as well has this puffer. Higher. Number 2, replacing dietary saturated fats with carbohydrates. I really want us to look at this. If you replace the saturated fat, if you decide, okay, I'm not going to take a food that is high in fat, but then you still end up taking your refined carbohydrate, which is your white chapati, your white bread, your white chapati, white bread, your mandazi, you actually increase your risk of getting cardiovascular heart disease. But if you are to replace those high levels of fat with your whole grain carbohydrates, that is your githeri because it is whole, that is your ugali that you have taken to the kisiagi directly and you're taking that in, that is your whole chapati, those are your, that is your, what is it called, your njahe, your beans. What does it mean? You reduce your chances of getting heart diseases by 9%. So what do we say? From your diet, remove the saturated fat, also remove the refined carbohydrates, and be left with more and more of the whole grains in terms of the foods that you take into your body. Higher, both polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats are effective in reducing cardiovascular disease, that is PUFA and MUFA, and the best is the polyunsaturated. Now, a diet high in saturated fats, I taught you this, raises the low density lipoprotein cholesterol and increases coronary atherosclerosis. And a diet low in saturated fat, but high in polyunsaturated fat has the reverse effect. By this, I simply mean high in saturated fat, the first fat that I taught you will increase low density lipoprotein, the bad fat. But a food that is low in this fat and high in the PUFA and high in the MUFA will actually increase the good fat in your body, which is necessary. You need the good fat because the good fat fights the bad fat and also has very many other effects like the absorption of vitamin A, D, K, and hormones in your body. So this is something that I knew would come up, eggs and cholesterol? This is a question that is really asked. And I remember I mentioned earlier on that I work in a research department. So part of my work is reading and reading. Now, one large egg yolk has 200 milligrams of cholesterol. That's the cholesterol that is in the egg itself. It is in the egg. It is not in your body. It is in the egg. Now, the egg also has two types of fat, the monounsaturated and the puffer, which is about 5 grams. I want you to note one thing. I hope I do not confuse anybody, and I hope everybody gets this really clearly. In case of questions, please ask me so that I can clarify. The dietary cholesterol. Remember when I talked about dietary fats, I talked about 3 kinds of fats. I talked about the SAFA, the puffer, and the MUFA. And then I talked about the cholesterol within your body in terms of 2 ways, the LDL and the HDL. Now, when dietary cholesterol, the egg has cholesterol, yes, 200 milligrams. But it does not have any effect once it is within your body. Once you take it within your body, it does not have any effect. So the cholesterol in the egg does not affect the bad fat, does not lead to bad fat formed in your body. So what research has shown is that up to 1 egg is not associated with increased heart disease. So sometimes people say, if you take in eggs, you're going to have heart disease. No, if you take in an egg, you're not going to have an increased heart disease. An egg it is better to have an egg for breakfast, particularly a boiled egg, not a fried egg. Because if you fry it, then probably you add bread, then you add cheese, then you add blue band, that egg has changed. But if you've taken a boiled egg in the morning, it is much better than the mandazi that you would have taken for breakfasts. But for persons with diabetes and heart disease, please note, the egg will not increase your risk for heart disease. But for people who already have diabetes and heart disease, it is best to limit egg consumption to not more than 3 yolks per week. So the middle part, it is best to limit to not more than 3 eggs per week. But the best food for lowering heart diseases, as I've said again, is whole grains and fruits. You need the meat in your body, you need the fat in your body, but you need it in small quantities. What you need more is whole grains and fruits. And where you can replace eggs with plant proteins like nuts and seeds, please do. Don't say we're told to eat eggs, then you go taking eggs 3 per day. No, just 1 per day. And after that 1 per day, where you can alternate an egg with nuts and seeds, please, to reduce the amount of eggs you take, but take them just in moderation. Higher. Salt, on average, we usually consume 10 times more salt than we actually need. Now, salt is important in our body, but again, the analogy that I've been using with water, again, this is what happens in your body. You've taken a high level of salt. Your body draws water from within your cells, and the volume of your blood increases. Now, imagine pumping very little water through a pipe and pumping high levels of water through a pipe. This is what happens to your blood. Your blood is pumping a high level of water because you've taken in salt. The salt has added in water into your body, and it's just trying to pump it through. The other thing is your kidneys then go on an overdrive trying to take the salt out of your system. So what we recommend that you take in terms of salt in one particular day is just 5 grams. It's just 5 grams per day. Now, salt is made up of sodium and chloride, sodium chloride, naturally from the foods we take. And that's why I encourage, use the spices to spice up your food, particularly if they are whole. Just use those, because if they have probably been reconstituted, you don't know what has been added to them. But you get about 1 gram per day of sodium. So what you need to supplement is 1 gram of sodium, which is about a 1/4 teaspoon. The teaspoon, a 1/4 of it, that is the amount of sodium you need in a day. When it is sodium chloride, you need about 5 grams, just 5 grams per person. So that means it's just about a teaspoon of salt that you need from breakfast to supper to add to your food. Unfortunately, we end up taking around 7 to 12 grams per day, which is not healthy. And then I look at the beverages. So beverages, I know this is quite interesting, particularly for the lovers of tea and coffee. So beverages, number 1 for the beverages, take smoothies. not juice. There's a difference. For us as nutritionists, when you take of a smoothie, it is you've taken your mango and your banana and you have blended them together and you have not sieved it or taken it through a juicer and you take that. That is very healthy. It still has the fibers. But if you take your mango and your banana, then you blend it, then you sieve out, or you take it through a juicer. Because when you take it through a juicer, what happens? The juicer takes out the fibers and gives you this really thin juice. That is not healthy at all. That just does not have any fiber. So what happens? It boosts up your sugars and increases your risk of getting diabetes. So soda, the same. Now, if you like your coffee and your tea, it is healthy for you actually, but do not add milk to it. Do not add sugar to it. When you add milk, when you add sugar, you turn it into a caloric bomb. So it loses the health benefits it would have had. But if you want to take your sugar, like your coffee like that, unsweetened, as long as the coffee has been filtered, you can check the label of your coffee as you buy it. As long as your coffee has been filtered, actually it has been shown to lower the risk of cardiovascular disease, the risk of stroke, and the risk of type 2 diabetes. And this is from research, and I have quite very many evidences and papers that can support this. But the coffee has to be filtered coffee. And filtered coffee usually has something that we call diterpenes, such as cafestol, that can raise your LDL cholesterol. But filtered coffee is very high, so feel free to take your filtered coffee. If you want to sweeten it, you can do it with honey and lemon. If you can also take black tea without sugar, without milk, very, very healthy. But when you add sugar, you add milk, it becomes a caloric bomb. That is what we call it as nutritionists. I know I have exceeded the time. Evangelist, can I just continue and finish? Mr. Harrison?
Yeah. Just try and wrap up.
Okay, so let me just try and go through this. I'm very sorry for taking up your more time than was necessary. So let me just try and wrap up. After I've discussed all that, remember we said the first part, we basically built upon the foundation of a healthy diet. The second part, I have tried to help you understand how your diet can protect you against diseases. And the key points from it is that whole grains, foods that are rich in fiber are the best. Higher. Then I want to just look at diabetes at a very fast rate. Then I look at diabetes. Then I look at hypertension, then obesity really quickly. Then we can wrap this up. So diabetes, what happens with diabetes within your body is that diabetes is elevated levels of blood glucose. I have told you, when you take in carbohydrates or a food that is rich in carbohydrates and has no dietary fiber particularly, even the ones that have dietary fiber, what happens is that when you take in any food, it is broken down in your body. When this food is broken down in your body, two things happen. When a food is full of dietary fiber, particularly the whole foods, it takes a very long time before it's broken down. But when this food has no dietary fiber, it's broken down so fast. So immediately you take in food, it's broken down. Immediately it's broken down, the blood glucose peaks or blood sugar. That means when we come and measure your hand for blood sugar, the blood sugar is high. Now, when the blood sugar peaks, normally your body realizes the blood sugar is high. We don't need this high blood sugar. The pancreas is told, release insulin. Insulin goes into your body and insulin converts this blood sugar now into fat. And it is then, we call it glucagon, and it is stored in your body as fat. Now, that means if you take refined carbohydrates, umekula breakfast, ukakuja ukasikia njaa, you probably took white bread, umekaka umekula biscuit, umekaka you've taken a soda. What happens is that insulin is continuously being released. Release insulin, release insulin, release insulin. That is what is happening in your body. It is continuously being released. And this is what ends up to you causing diabetes, because at some point your pancreas just gets tired and it says, no, I cannot do this anymore. And when it gets tired, it starts when the blood sugar comes, it does not notice that there's anything that you have taken. That means when we measure you end up having elevated blood levels, and that is what we call diabetes. Now, diabetes is in three major ways. We have type 1, young children; type 2, obese and middle age; and gestational, that happens in pregnant people. What we're looking at is simply type 2 diabetes. Now, if we can diagnose you early, it becomes really good. Why? Because if we can diagnose you early, then we can quickly be able to reduce your sugars, and we can get your pancreas to working again. If it is not totally, if the beta cells are not totally dead, they've just become insensitive. If they've simply become insensitive, we can quickly get them to becoming sensitive again. And we get them to becoming sensitive by different things. One of the things that we usually do, I'll just go through this a bit fast. One of the things that we do is ask you to exercise. Another one of the reasons that your pancreas gets tired is the fat that I told you accumulates. In the pancreas, again, this LDL fat accumulates on the beta cells that are usually activated for the production of insulin. So they are no longer sensitive. So as nutritionists, if we can get you before you develop diabetes itself, or even when you're in pre-diabetic phase, we can usually be able to reduce fully we can able to help you reduce the sugars in your blood and get your pancreas up and again and back to producing the insulin. We get your cells sensitive through two major. We exercise. When you exercise, I've told you the bad fat is taken away. Number two, there's something that we call cytokines. They're released in your body. They reduce the inflammation in your body. And when they reduce the inflammation in your body, then the sensitivity rises and that means you end up getting type 2 diabetes at a lower level. I think this type 2 is just a whole class that we can just have a presentation on just type 2 diabetes alone and talk about it and how to prevent it. It's really depth. Number 2 is hypertension. I talked about hypertension and how you end up having high raised blood pressure. Some of the risk factors we said are unhealthy diets. I've told you about excessive salt, a diet that is high in the saturated fat and the trans fats, low intake of fruits and vegetables, the physical inactivity, you're not active, because the minute you're active, then you're going to release your body is going to release good fat. The minute you're releasing good fat, the good fat HDL fights against the LDL. You also release something that is called cytokines. You release something that fights against the inflammation that is also in your body. Consumption of also tobacco and alcohol also leads to because it triggers LDL consumption is produced more and more in your body. Then being overweight and obese, and also the family history. Prevention of hypertension: eat more fruits and vegetables, being physically active, avoiding the use of tobacco, limiting the intake. I hope we can get another session one day to just discuss diabetes alone, and another one just to discuss hypertension alone, from what causes it to how to reduce it and the foods that can reduce it. Overweight and obesity. Remember what I told you about the BMI? Can your spinal cord support the weight that you're having? If it cannot, you end up being overweight, you end up being obese. And obese and being overweight is the precursor to you getting diabetes, is the precursor to you getting hypertension. You getting arthritis, breast cancers, most of these things increase with the fact of you becoming overweight and also becoming obese. So I think let me just finish up with this final part. I've skipped that part for diseases. We'll look at it another day. Let me just finish on this. So how can I truly maintain a healthy diet? With all that I have taught you, how you do this is, number one, eat a variety of foods from different food groups every day. Include whole, unprocessed, or starchy foods as part of the meals. So to make a good meal, mixed meal, eat starchy foods with foods from at least 2 or 3 other food groups. This is something that you usually do. If it's taking your ugali, add to your ugali vegetables, add to your ugali vegetables, the animal protein as well. Eat plenty of green leafy vegetables. I've talked about this, and fruits. Include a variety of fruits and vegetables. I'll just skip through this. Eat beans, peas, lentils at least 4 times a week. Eat lean meat, fish, and seafood at least twice a week. Drink milk, fresh milk, fermented milk, or yogurt every single day. Then use oil and fat in moderation. I've taught you the disadvantages of that. Use sugar, kidogo sana. Use iodized salt, but use very little of it. Use other condiments to prepare the food. Finally, drink plenty of safe water. I think this will just help us this is how your plate should look like. Half of your plate should be whole grains and healthy protein. The whole grains is whole grain bread, whole grain pasta, the brown rice. Avoid as much as possible the refined, the white breads, the white chapos and all that. The healthy protein is choose fish, poultry, beans and nuts, limit red meat and cheese, avoid the bacons, the sausages and all that. They are not healthy at all. They are nice to eat, but they have zero health benefit really when you think about it, because of everything that makes it so unhealthy. Then use healthy oils when for cooking and on salad and at the table. Avoid the use of trans fat and the saturated fat. Then the vegetables and the fruits, half of the other plate. Vegetables, that's the portion. The more vegetables, the better. Potatoes and French fries do not count at all. Then eat plenty of fruits of all colors. And then finally, drink water, tea or coffee with little or no sugar. Limit milk or dairy. And then we have this one. This one is for adults or above 5 years of age. Then we have the healthy eating plate for preschoolers. This is how it looks like. Again, I think maybe a session for young parents so that we can look into it much deeper. Then healthy eating and leadership. One is that as a leader, please always remember in your society and in your community that every single person is watching you. And I think this is one of the reasons I really love the Presbyterian Church, because of what we are doing to continuously enlighten people and teach people on different things. As a leader, what you eat might not say that you're the best leader because you eat like this. It might not make or break you, but your effectiveness as a leader, your energy levels, your resilience, what you eat will contribute to that. If you're eating well and healthy, you're able to really be the best kind of a leader, I believe, because your energy levels are top-notch. Your effectiveness is also top-notch, because foods will also affect your mental health. A very interesting study showed that in the US that they lost 36.4 billion per year because of employees missing days of work. I actually feel that the money we spend on medical insurance can be reduced if we live a healthy lifestyle. The place that we spend most of the time is the churches we serve in. And I love what we are doing as a church to invite people to speak on different aspects. Have health weeks where you focus on today is healthy eating, tomorrow is diabetes, the next day is hypertension. Have a gym if it is at the workplace. We encourage our church. We believe we are going to get a gym soon, which members can enjoy at a reduced fee. And finally, have a fitness partner. It is very hard to walk the journey of being healthy alone. But if you're 2 or 3 people even who have diabetes, get a good nutrition coach. Let them advise you. Each person will have their model, yes. But as you walk together and as you work together, you find that you end up getting more healthier as compared to doing it all on your own. And finally, thank you very much. I'm sorry for taking up more time than I should have. That's my telephone number and that's my email. I think I'll just stop sharing, then maybe give a few minutes for questions.
Thank you so much, Umotho, Kinya, Mbae, Mugambi. Indeed, that was very well packaged. And I must say that you have taught us with passion, clearly showing that this is what you're called for and what you're called to do. We are very much inspired, and were it not for time, would have wanted to cover every bit of what you had. But I want to believe and assure you that we shall have you some other time to continue on those bits that you felt that you didn't do as you'd have wished to, because there's a lot, and especially with the diseases that you're talking about, diabetes, hypertension, obesity, and also the bit about children. So we'll continue engaging you. And thank you so much, members, even for the patience. I know we've gone way much more than we're used to. But this, of course, is because of our health. And like they say, health is wealth. I don't know whether we have any very burning question, but what I would want to suggest is, if members would allow, I'd want us to continue from here next week. We can still get to Umotho next week on Tuesday, so that she is able to wrap up on the areas that she has not finished, and then we can keep our questions until then. Or better still, you can send me your questions, so that even as she prepares for the next session, she can start with responding to the questions and then go to her presentation. Otherwise, we have a lot of positive comments on the chat section, people appreciating your session, Umotho, and I think that is acknowledged. So may God bless us, and I want to invite our parish minister, who is with us also, to just greet us and also give us a benediction. But I can assure members that we shall carry on next Tuesday from where we have left. Thank you so much. Mchungaji.
Thank you very much, Umotho, for the great presentation. Indeed, as the evangelist is saying, would want to continue. Wish we knew it was this big, would have cut it into two. And we are happy for the great and the in-depth research that has gone into this. So we are grateful. May the Lord bless you so much. We are looking forward to next week, when we can also have you maybe wrap up and also do another part that has remained. We are thankful. Can we all say the grace together? And now may the grace
of our Lord
Our
Jesus,
Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God,
the
the
fellowship
fellowship of the Holy Spirit,
be with us
rest
now
and
Be with us
forevermore.
forever.
Amen.